Worldwide movement, peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq hollering at you one more again. Man, I love you all, truly. I mean that. Huh? I love you all. Thank you. Because you make this possible. And we're doing it. We are changing the paradigm. And we're building what? Huh? The worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. Big King Sadiq. One more time. Just thanking you all. Truly, sincerely. Know that you have my gratitude. All right. Please, let's continue to build this. Remember, right now, we are surging powerfully toward the new synchronicity number 444. That's what we want to achieve in the subscriptions. And then, folks, it gets really interesting. You watch. When we hit that 444, we're going to grow exponentially to 4444 and beyond, right? So please, let's help to hit that number. Please like, share, subscribe. Check me out on all the platforms. My music on all the streaming platforms. Please check out my Twitter feed. Please make sure when you come to the channel that you check in on the community section of the channel and get all that important and specific information there. And let's continue to build the worldwide movement. Peace, love, respect. All right, folks, this is a video that I would probably have to describe as my most comprehensive, right? I would say that this is one of my most important videos that I'll ever make, right? And there's a lot to it, so let me not do a lot of build up. So really, folks, I want to get started and dive right in with a very sincere and warm condolences. I want to send my true condolences to the family and all the loved ones of Shanquella Robinson. Tragic are fitting words, right? Heartbreaking are fitting words. Alarming are fitting words, right? Folks, most of us would never even perceive something like that possibly happening. I'm sure that she certainly didn't, right? But it does open up the door for us to start to talk about something that is incredibly important, incredibly shocking to many, and really is a slap in the face, right? In terms, or not a slap in the face as much as a real, something to grab you and shake you and to listen. This is serious, and this is what's happening on the planet right now, right? How could any person, let alone a vivacious young person who had their entire prosperous, beautiful life ahead of them, lose their life in this way? And why or how could we possibly have a situation where someone could be murdered by their own friends? Folks, this is a deep and chilling subject, but it's real, so we got to deal with it. And I told you in 2022 that so much would start coming out, that it's all going to come out in 2022. And that includes, and in fact, especially the darkest parts. And this young lady's death certainly opens the door for us to realize that is what we're looking at, right? I saw on the brother Ralph Smart on his channel. He was talking about uh, frenemies, right? Um, yeah, that certainly can be a fitting term, because with friends like that, who does need enemies, right? So that's fitting. Um, and I'll make another quick note. While I was watching that video, I just took a glance down in the comments, right? Uh, and I do that because while you find often, trolling and things like that going on in comment sections of videos, that's easy to recognize and look past. That never concerns me. Um, what is interesting to me and does touch me deeply are the personal experiences of folks out there in the world, right? Um, and I started just reading in a little bit on some of the comments, right? And things like, wow, could you imagine the same thing, but only happening with your spouse, right? Could you imagine, so many different things, scenarios where, and situations where people have described folks who are very, very close to them completely betraying them, right? Um, Becoming the most dangerous of enemies and exhibiting behavior that is straight up vile, right? Um, that's what we're talking about, right? Both what this young lady experienced, sadly, and lost her life over, and with so many people in this country, around the world, are experiencing. Folks, this made me think a bit about the words of Mrs. Mandela when she talked about not recognizing her husband when he came out of the penitentiary. Now, folks, she wasn't talking about his physical appearance, huh? She said at one point, and made a point to focus and get across that she means what she's saying when she said, "That's not my husband." Whoa, what you mean, Big King? You heard what I said. Now, what does she mean? She recognizes that that may have been her husband's body, his physical vessel. But the consciousness inside of his vessel, of that vessel, was no longer that of her husband. Now, if I'm misquoting her in some way, or misstating the situation in some way, my apologies and condolences and everything to her and her loved ones and everyone, because certainly Mr. Mandela was a powerful and worldly figure, right? And certainly important. But don't get lost, or don't let it be lost on you, the point of which I'm making. We are seeing all over the world, and it's really very evident here what's happening in the United States. I live in the United States at the moment, right? I live in Dayadega, which is the real ancestral name of the lands that the city of Pittsburgh, PA sits on. Dayadega, right? Which, by the way, means the navel of the universe. And I will be doing a very important video on that. Thanks again, and shout out to all the brothers who I went to, the brothers and sisters I went on the tour of Pittsburgh that was held by some powerful brothers. Um, I don't want to misstate anything or go too far, of course, on that, but I'll be talking about that in the future. But what has happened all over the planet and right here in the United States, as we're seeing all these deaths, right, in various ways, and all of it seemingly nefarious, even if it's a health related situation, it often seems to be there's something a little off there about that story, right? And the more we uncover about a lot of this, the more we see there's a lot wrong, right? So focusing again on what's happening with folks having some of their closest loved ones and the people who they really trust betray them and turn on them and truly become enemies, right? And I mean mortal enemies. We're not just talking about, oh, so-and-so's hating on me at the office, or so-and-so's on Facebook talking stuff on me. We're not talking about that. Though in petty ways it could take on those forms. We're talking about life and death, as we see in the case of this young lady, Shanquella Robinson. We're talking about vile behavior that gets to the point of murder. We're talking about complete lack of compassion, empathy, or care for people who these folks that exhibit this behavior are supposed to love, or at least like, right? Instead, we're seeing hatred and bitter, vile, dangerous behavior. What is going on with that, folks? We're going to talk about that. We are seeing the behavior exhibited of people whose consciousness is no longer what controls their physical body. What, Big King? That's right. We're talking about people, in many of these cases, whose consciousness has literally been hijacked out of their vessel. What? Now, before you start saying to yourselves, Big King is another one of those crazy conspiracy theorists, right? Hopefully, anybody looking at this channel knows enough to know the purpose of those terms, right? It's to delegitimize people and to get you to not pay attention to what may be very valuable and important information, right? That's the whole reason why the CIA years ago floated that term out there and started to really put power and force behind it so that the masses would soak it up as a way to dismiss easily anyone who spoke about things that is deemed dangerous or that is deemed important in a way that it threatens the socioeconomic elite and their power structures on the planet. Okay? So, having stated that, what are we talking about? We're talking about what I have termed for myself as vessel compromisation. When I say vessel, of course, I'm talking about your physical, corporeal human body. When I say compromisation, well, folks, we all know what it is to be compromised. What we mean when we say that's compromised, right? The question is by what? Now, here's where it gets not just interesting, but maybe mind-blowing, folks, but real nonetheless, right? And again, always never take my word for it. Do the research yourself and you'll find the same things I've found and many others have found, right? So vessels are being compromised. People, human beings, their consciousness is being compromised in several different ways. The most obvious way, or maybe not the most obvious, or should I say, the most common way is indoctrination, right? Folks, the average human being, and it's different around the planet because there are different cultures and different systems in place around the planet. I can speak for you for sure about this country that from the moment you are born, there are layers and layers and layers of indoctrination heaped upon you, right? Much of it done by folks who are unsuspecting and may not even realize that they are assisting in putting those layers of indoctrination on you. But all of that adds up to the compromisation of a person's consciousness within their vessel, because rather than following their gut, their heart, and their mind, their soul's direction, right? We're finding that they are actually playing out the directives of the indoctrination, right? Okay. Another form is technology. Folks, do the research on the 5G technology. Do the research on the true capabilities and how deep and intrinsically these phones, you'll notice I left off a word, get it? I left off a word about these phones that have incredible ability to interface and intrinsically and invasively interface with your body and your mind, right? All right. And folks, anybody out there who believes that mind control is a fictitious thing and doesn't exist, do your research, folks. I mean, at this point, you're very far behind. The patents for mind control technology have been out for a long time, and the actual manifestations of that in the form of various mind control technologies has been prolific. If you don't know or don't believe that, I'm sorry, but you're just ignorant. I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way or a way to belittle you, but I'm letting you know the truth. You are ignorant to those facts and should do, and I recommend rather that you do research on that. So technology is another very powerful form in a way of being compromised and folks' vessels being compromised. I'm gonna try to speed this up a little bit because I know my time is getting up there, but I actually still have a good bit to go. So another in the next form that I would mention brings about a very sort of far out there for those who are new to this, or very esoteric segment of information regarding this next form of vessel compromisation. And it is physical, and it is done through parasites. What? What are you talking about, Big King? That's right, folks. For any of you who are unaware of this phenomenon, again, I say, do the research. Folks, you can even find National Geographic videos where they talk about ants that are compromised by parasites tiny, tiny parasites that are so intelligent and nefarious in their behavior that they actually root themselves in the brain of the ant, not even really wanting to be in the ant in terms of its ending or its final destination for this parasite. They're actually using the ant as a vehicle to get to where they want to go. What do I mean by that? I mean that these parasites, and often when they are completely taken over, the ant is completely taken over. And when I say this, folks, understand, you'll see it in the video if you look it up. The ant's behavior is actually driven, controlled by the parasite completely. Where it goes, how it moves, what it does, right? Completely controlled by the parasite. And it's done completely without the knowledge of the rest of the colony. Now, we know animals and insects can pick up a lot of things that human beings don't pick up readily. But even with that being the case, these ants have no idea that their fellow ants, several of them in the colony, have been completely compromised by this parasite. Now, what does the parasite want, and how does it control the behavior of the ant? The parasite wants to end up in a cow or some other grazing animal, right? So what does it do? It controls the behavior of the ant. And in the video, you see the ant leave out of the line. Now, folks, for any of us who, when we're younger or any point in our lives, watch the behavior of ants, you see that they are incredibly methodical, right? When they got a line of ants doing something, transporting food back to the nest or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Whatever the activity is that they are in a group engaged in, that entire group is singularly focused on accomplishing that task, right? Well, folks, these parasites have the ability to control the behavior of the ant, make it leave out of the line, and go post itself up on the top of some plant that a grazing animal is all but sure to come along shortly and devour. So that parasite can enter into the system of the grazing animal, get to its liver, and that's where it posts up and gets its sustenance and continues to grow and spawn and take at least some control of the new host, to ensure that being does everything that the parasite wants it to do to further its agenda. Wow. And this is right off of what I pulled off of a National Geographic video. There are other videos, tons of videos on this phenomenon. And there are other examples in nature where this happens. That's just one. I will pose to you now, folks, that unfortunately, another example has to be added in human beings. All right? And the last way that I'll talk about, this may not necessarily be the only or the last way of form of compromisation that is utilized, but the last one I'll talk about is possession, commonly referred to as spiritual possession. Now, folks, those of you who are familiar with my channel know that I'm not religious. However, I am very well versed and very familiar with the religious dogma surrounding the phenomenon of possession, which is a real phenomenon, right? there are decades and probably centuries worth of documentation on this phenomenon held by the Catholic Church, right? And other nefarious, I deem nefarious, organizations and entities with vast amounts of information on this subject. And if you were to talk to or engage in a conversation about this subject with indigenous folks all around the planet, right, including the continent of Africa, you'll find that they will share with you their own stories of possession, where folks' spirits or their consciousness have been possessed within their vessel by another consciousness or spirit, okay, of a low vibrational frequency nature. Because obviously, to possess someone's body is a low vibrational frequency act, right? It's certainly not an act of freedom. Now, folks, this is accomplished in a lot of different ways. I'll talk about a couple, one of which is when a person's vibrational frequency resonates. Now, we all reach different vibrational frequencies during the course of a day or during the course of our life. But through a prolonged duration or length of time in your life that you are residing or resonating is the correct term, in a low vibrational frequency, this can occur. We even see, now this is where you got to temper all this, but you can see this played out in TV series and movies, right? Hollywood, I often say, gives you little clues as to what's really going on by giving you a certain percentage of the truth and then just putting a bunch of fluff around it. And most of the time we get so distracted with the fluff that we just say, oh, that's all just fictitious, such and such. And most of it is, right? But they often also do give you little clues to what's really going on, right? So you'll see that in some of these these movies and some of these TV series and whatnot. One thing of interest I noted that I saw on one of these shows, where a method of compromisation is that they actually torture and beat a person to near death. And then right before the person, or right at the moment that the person's spirit or soul, should I say, the spirit connection to the soul within the body is severed, right at that moment, the compromisation takes place. I've heard this, you can see like as referred to on these sitcoms and whatnot. Also another way that's done, and this is like a very, if you think about this is shrewdly efficient, right? Another method that is similar to that is, instead of physically beating the person is shocked and frightened, literally brought to such an extreme point of fear that it drops their vibrational frequency to the lowest point, which is fear. Look into that, and you can familiarize yourself with that as well. Fear is certainly amongst the lowest of vibrational frequencies.